Hello and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller and I'm joined once again by arts reporter Toni Tresca. Hey, Toni, how's it going?
Going good. Hey, Alex. Happy to be with you.
Yeah, it's so here we are on October 21st. We took a week off the podcast because. But we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. So we're going to review some of the latest shows that we've seen and reviewed on the site, and also take a look at what's coming up around Colorado. And it's getting fast and furious as we head into, there's all kinds of Halloween shows, and then as we're starting, November is just around the corner, so we're going to start to see some of the holiday shows already. So lots to talk about there. And also later in the podcast, I've got an interview I did with playwright Ellen K. Graham, whose new play Loki's Monstrous Children opens in early November at Buntport. So she's got like kind of her own company called Feral Assembly, and she just it's just kind of a thing that she uses to put out her own plays, and this one's kind of like a lot of her stuff leans towards like sci-fi and fantasy, and this one's based on Norse mythology and Loki, the god of mischief or whatever, and stuff like that. So it sounds really interesting. So that's a great conversation. So stick around for that one. I was also going to mention, I got an email a week or two ago saying, "Hey, congratulations! The OnStage Colorado Podcast is named a top 20 Colorado arts podcast by FeedSpot," and basically it's one of these things where it's like, and by the way, sign up for this extra thing and pay us money or whatever. So, I mean, there's a little bit of that to it. But I was curious to what other Colorado podcasts are there talking about, there's not a ton. And some of the ones on the list, that was like one who's like a realtor. I'm like, I don't think that's an arts podcast.
Well, the art of design, the art of the home.
the art of selling, an ensuite bathroom. And so, but there are a few, there is one other theater podcast that Ghostlights with Sam Gilstrap, who's a great actor. And he does, it's basically an interview with, theater artists. And he had one recently, but I think it was the first time he'd done a podcast in like almost a year. So it's kind of just an occasional thing for him. There's one called Swine Before Pearls, which is an A&E podcast based in Colorado. So I might give that a listen and see what those guys are doing. There's one that I thought this is talking about niche A&E. What's good? Loveland. It's like all the Loveland, Colorado arts and entertainment scene. So that seems like
good for Loveland. I'm glad that they have a whole podcast dedicated to their art scene.
Yeah. So I also wanted to talk about. So in your bio, you say that you're also a contributor to this podcast called "Such a Nightmare: Conversations About Horror." And I'm sorry to say that I just listened to a little bit of an episode this morning, and I realized I really should be listening to your other podcast, but. It looks like you're still doing fresh episodes. Do you want to talk real quickly about what that one's all about?
Yeah, sure. It's a podcast that I do with a professor over at Trinity University, Dr. Catherine Troyer. She got her PhD in horror. And I actually had the chance in my undergrad to work with her on a couple of research projects into horror. And one of our outputs was this podcast that we did. And we started as doing it kind of, as a part of a summer research, but we just kept doing it because it gave us a nice, fun reason to continue talking to each other. And so we kind of just do deep dives into different horror texts, films, books, kind of stuff like that. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So if you're into horror stuff, definitely check out Such a Nightmare and Trinity College in Texas, right?
Yeah, not in Dublin. There are two prominent Trinities, not the one over in Dublin. Yeah, San Antonio, Texas. Yep. So it's kind of got an academic spin to it, since she is kind of she's a PhD, so she kind of brings in a critical framework, and then I bring in a bit more of kind of I'll look into the background of how the film or the book got made, and bring in the drama usually.
Right, that's great. And as we know, podcasts are fun. It's just like it's an excuse to have a conversation about something you're interested in. And if people enjoy it, great. If not too many people listen to it, whatever, we're still having fun. So,
absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, what other podcasts do you listen to regularly? Or is there anything in particular, you might listen to like a news podcast or something like that, but are there any of those serial type podcasts or ongoing ones that you like to listen to?
So I guess I don't have any. You listened to Serial, the podcast that you mentioned, for the first 3 seasons. Big fan. I actually am a really big, I guess if you can't tell from the fact that I do 2 podcasts, I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of them. They kind of fall into 2 different camps for me. I listen to a lot of news and politics podcasts and then entertainment podcasts. So like a local one I'll shout out. I love listening to CityCast Denver in the morning. That's a great local podcast. They always have on, it's kind of like an arts podcast because they usually always spotlight some cool art event or something going on. But even when they're not, they're just talking about kind of the news. Like this week was all about the upcoming elections and whatnot. Really informative. I also love Today Explained and The Daily. Those are 2 like daily news podcasts. Yeah, and then more on the like entertainment side, I like Pop Culture Happy Hour by NPR, Little Gold Men by Vanity Fair. They talk about the Oscars race. I'm a huge like award season fanatic. I love the math of it all.
Man, that's great.
Yeah, so definitely if you are someone who like watches the Oscars with like your own personal ballot pulled up, this is the podcast for you because it's just a deep dive into that culture. And then I also really love Conan's podcast, Conan O'Brien. It's called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. He just has the wackiest like random celebrities on there, and he just has like an hour plus conversation with them that's just very like loose and fun, and it never fails to be a good time.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. And I actually have heard that Conan's podcast is pretty good, and it's amazing how many big celebs do their own podcasts as well. So yeah, I listen to a lot of the same. I listen to like The Daily, from the New York Times pretty much every day, and I also like so Ezra Klein from the New York Times has a podcast called The Ezra Klein Show, which is really heady and intellectual, and he's kind of an egghead, but he really knows this shit, and it's, if you can buckle in and listen to, an hour and 20 minutes of, philosophical conversation about, hot button issues, it's pretty interesting.
Depending on the topic, I'll sometimes listen into that one. It really has to be a compelling topic to make me sit down for an hour and 20, but yeah. He's really smart.
Yeah, he is. He's a kind of a hero of mine. I'm like, man, that would be a great job. But the other podcast that I've been listening to. So I don't know if you know this about me, Toni, but I am a big fan of nautical historical fiction. Specifically Patrick O'Brien.
I can honestly say that this is the first time I'm learning this information.
So a lot of people are familiar with it through the film Master and Commander, which I think was like 2003 or something like that. Russell Crowe was in it. And it was basically, and it was based on kind of like the series. So this is a series of 20 novels, and I've read them 7 or 8 times now. And as part of this, and there's this whole subculture of people who are just fascinated by it because they're really damn good. It's really great literature, and it's really about this relationship between the ship's captain, who's portrayed by Russell Crowe in the film, and his surgeon / intelligence agent friend, who is played by Paul Bettany in the film, and it just happens to be set, in during the Napoleonic Wars on a British, different British men of war. So anyway, there's these 2 super nerdy guys that just talk about, like, just go through every book and just talk about it, just ad nauseum. And it's like, so it's kind of fun to listen to. That's a highly niche thing, but those guys, it's funny. I just started listening to it, and it's like, I think they're up to like 180 episodes, and I'm like, wow, there's only 20 books, so they must kind of just go. They call it, and apparently a lot of people have read these books or listened to them on tape way more than I have. It's like they just listen to them. They call it a circumnavigation of the series. So anyway, so that one is called The Lubber's Hole. And so this lubbers are people who don't know much about the sea, and a lubber's hole was a way to get up into the masts without, in sort of a, lame way, not like the way a real seaman would do it. So
I love that. It's crazy. It's how many niches there are and how many podcasts there are that cater to that. That's so cool.
Yep, absolutely. So anyway, all right. Well, let's switch back to talking about theater. So we wanted to talk about this list that just came out from American Theater Magazine of the top 10 most produced plays in the United States right now this season, I think going into 2024. And it's pretty interesting to look at it. So I'll just read off the list real quick. So it's just one, and there's some ties in here. So that's why there's a couple of there's more than 10. So What the Constitution Means to Me by Heidi Schreck. Clydes by Lynn Nottage, which, as we know, is opening at the Denver Center in just a week or so.
And actually, what the Constitution Means to Me, that'll be coming to Colorado too, courtesy of BETC. They're doing it at the Savoy in January and at the Dairy Center in May. So top two are coming to Colorado soon.
I didn't realize that. So is that a one-hander? The playwright was Heidi Schreck, and I was just reading up about it.
It's kind of a one-hander. It's largely led by one woman who is going to be played by Jessica Rablay in Betsy's production. And there is actually another individual who is on stage, kind of an older guy. I believe that's being played by Rodney in this production. And then there is a young girl who is supposed to represent her in like the final scene. And they do actually a debate about the Constitution, a live debate every night. They flip a coin, and this actress and this little girl who's supposed to represent her have a debate about the Constitution and an amendment. So It's kind of a fun, reflective play. That's a small cast.
And I think it's got a lot of what the Constitution means to me from a woman's point of view as well. I think,
yes.
Touch on a lot of those topics. So Clyde's has got something to do with incarcerated folks. I don't know.
Sandwich shop. They're all working together, and they'll learn forgiveness.
Okay. So it's like a sandwich shop for ex-cons.
That's right.
Something like that. And then this one, POTUS, or Behind Every Great Dumbass, are 7 Women Trying to Keep Him Alive by Selena Fillinger. I don't know of a local production of that coming up, but that sounds like a fun one. The Lehman trilogy. So this is interesting. This is an Italian play originally by Stefano Massini, is adapted by Ben Power. I mean, it goes back to 2013, and it's about these 3 immigrants who form the Lehman Brothers, and it's a long ass play. It's like 3 acts. It's over 3 hours, and so I was interested to see that they're I'm not sure what's inspired their revival, but a dozen productions of that coming up.
It was just in New York, and was very popular up there. And I guess that's also why it's coming to the DCPA in May. They'll be at the DCPA from May 3rd through June 2nd, 2024. So you'll have a chance to see this behemoth of a play then.
Yeah. So buckle in for that one. Dial M for Murder, which is a kind of a old warhorse. That's I don't know if this is a new version. It says adapted by Jeffrey Hatcher from Frederick Knott's original play. I don't know how new this adaptation is, but 9 productions of that kicking around. And it's a show called Fat Ham by James Ijames, maybe, or I James is how it's spelled. Do you know anything about Fat Ham? Yeah,
it's an adaptation of Hamlet that is set, I believe it's somewhere in the South, and it's like this black family, and it's this retelling of that story. It's kind of supposed to be got a lot of comedy in it. It just opened in New York either this season or last season, pretty recently, and got really rave reviews. So I had a friend who got to catch it in Boston, and they said it's hilarious, and I needed to see it, but I was like, great. It's not going to be here in Colorado this upcoming season. So Colorado theater companies, get on it.
All right. Yes, please. Somebody produce Fat Ham. Number 7 is the Thanksgiving play by Larissa Fasthorse, which I saw at Curious a few years ago. I wasn't wild about it, but it's definitely got, it's fairly comedic and pretty fun. Number 8, Beautiful, the Carole King musical, which is, had several productions in Colorado this past year, which, you saw it, right?
I did. Yeah, I saw it at the Arvada Center, and I thought it was quite good. Much more elevated than your like a traditional jukebox musical. And it was also at Theater Aspen, among maybe some other places.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, you think of Carole King, there's not a lot of people alive these days who are that familiar with her music, I would think. But sometimes, a good show like this can breathe new life into some older material. And of course, she's still alive. It's not like she's long gone or anything like that.
I would also argue Tapestries is maybe a little bit, I don't know. It's still real. I love that album. It was super, I grew up on that one. So I feel like maybe just her, I think her music is still in the zeitgeist more than people realize.
Number 9, Sanctuary City by Martina Majak. Something about immigrants. I don't know much about that one. I don't know that one's coming anytime soon. Any input there?
I don't know any more than what you've said, and I can confirm it's not coming to Colorado anytime soon.
Okay. And then next is a familiar show, Cabaret, which is ever popular kind of thing going on with several productions upcoming. And then Every Brilliant Thing by Duncan McMillan and Johnny Donahue, we've definitely had a few productions of that in Colorado. And then the last one, which is, was another tie, was the Rocky Horror Show by Richard O'Brien, who was he was the actor who played Riff Raff in the original film, and who, wrote the whole thing. And the write-up in the magazine called it Freshly Edgy, of course, because of all the drag that's in it. And, of course, theater people love to stick it in the eye of these conservatives that are freaking out about culture war stuff. So, and of course, Rocky Horror is always popular around this time of year. And there's a couple of different productions of, and some of them are just, the live, watch the movie and do stuff.
The shadow cast.
That's right. I knew there was a term for it. So that's those are plays that it looks like Colorado's sort of somewhat represented, and maybe about half of them, I believe, they have done or are coming up. 7
by my count. Because there are technically 12 on the top 10 list due to the ties, and by my count, Colorado is represented by and done 7 of those shows recently. So that is pretty, I guess Colorado is pretty on the cutting edge in terms of kind of where the culture is.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting to note that, the list does not include any productions of A Christmas Carol or any Shakespeare, just because that would, just skew it really oddly, because those are just being produced all over the place. And they also pointed out that theater audiences, I guess when they survey them, they say they're not interested in political, oriented shows, but the top 3 are political in nature, or have some political overtones, things like that. So there's still an appetite for it. There's always the risk of, having a play that's too timely, and, it's stale after, a year passes or something like that, which I think is something that another show that we're going to talk about here shortly, Blasted, they were talking about, the flip side of that is, if you want to be relevant and timely on topical issues, you need to forget about having a show that takes several years to be workshopped and worked up and all that, and you need to just kind of bang it out and do it more quickly to it may not be as relevant, but you'll have gotten it out there. So another way to think about it. So. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, a look around the state at all of the live theater coming up here in October and as we get into November. So stay tuned. The OnStage Colorado podcast is sponsored in part by the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, BETC, whose new production of Coal Country shares the riveting story of a small West Virginia mining community moving through tragedy to make itself heard. The play by Eric Jensen and Jessica Blank also features music by 3-time Grammy Award winner Steve Earle. Coal Country runs October 26th through November 19th at the Dairy Arts Center in Boulder, and you can get tickets at thedairy.org and learn more about the show at betsy.org. Okay, welcome back to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here with Toni Tresca, and it's time for our weekly peek into some of the shows you can see on stage right now around Colorado and coming up. So on our website, the fresh reviews that we have up are Wicked Bayou, which is a dance performance at Wonderbound in Denver, which I saw last Wednesday, I guess I saw it. They had a media night, and this is a fantastic show. I kind of really raved about it in my review. It's a dance performance, but there's also a live band with this Boulder band called the Widow's Bane, which if you're familiar with Tom Waits or Leonard Cohen, or they definitely kind of work in that vein of kind of growly songs about dark themes and stuff like that. And it was just great. So I know you're going to see it soon, Toni, right? Or did you see it?
Yes. I'll be there tomorrow afternoon at the matinee. So if you are there, definitely say hi. I am super excited to catch this one. This is the first show in their completely paid off space. They just finished their $8.1 million capital campaign over at Wonderbound. And thanks to the donation of the Kerns, who also supported the symphony and the Science Center here around Colorado, of $1.5 million, they're able to now just live in that forever home, which is so exciting. In addition to,
it's so great to see a company like this have a paid for home like this. Although I will say they should invest a little more money in signage, because for one thing, Google Maps was had me around the block somewhere, and I was just kind of driving around, and finally I saw the big W, their distinctive W for Wonderbound, painted on a wall somewhere, and I was able to find my way in there. And it's kind of this weird warehouse district, and it happens to be where the David Byrne Theater of the Mind was held right in that area as well. There's I think there's a Four Noses brewery tap house there, and so it's kind of a little bit of a strange part of town, but make sure you follow the directions as best you can from the theater. So another show that Eric Fitzgerald reviewed for us, and which I also saw, is the Cherry Orchard at Miners Alley Playhouse. So this is a kind of a newer updated version of Chekhov's classic. It's just this big, really kind of complex family drama with all these kind of characters. And so, it's one of these shows where, is it a comedy? Is it a drama? It's definitely a little bit of both. There's plenty of laughs. And I thought Len Matteo did a great job directing it. It's a sizable cast on a small stage. So, and you saw that too, right, Toni?
I did. I was there on Saturday, last Saturday. It was my first time seeing it as well. And I think the first act, definitely, I was like, oh yeah, comedy all the way. But act two, I don't know. I think Lynn did a nice job. He didn't direct against those dramatic impulses that are still in the second act. And you're still allowed to kind of feel the gut punches that come.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And beforehand, I was over, and Len showed me around the new space. So if you don't know, Miners Alley Playhouse this is one of the last shows that they're going to have in their old space there, which is not great. It's too small. There's columns in the way. The seats are old. I mean, everything is just kind of inadequate for a theater company that's a professional theater company that's doing the kind of shows they are. And they've did a big fundraising campaign. They got some help from the city of Golden to purchase this old hardware store that's just a few steps away from their current facility. And man, it's huge. I was like, wow. Have you been in there yet, Toni?
I have. I took a tour with them I think it was way back earlier at the start of 2023 for a piece I did for Westward when it was still super open. They were still in the process of renovating it. So definitely, I'm sure it looked a lot different now. Yeah,
I mean, it definitely has got some work to do. They're planning to open it December 2nd. So they're definitely in a sprint to the end, but it looks like all the heavy work was done. It's just kind of like the finishing, like they're just got their seats in, and the risers. And the other thing that's interesting is that it's just like the first half, the master.
Yeah, I was about to say, my understanding is that it's phase. This will be phase one in December, and then phase two will be coming, which it includes a whole bunch of expansions, including 2 more theater spaces, another hangout space, more dressing rooms, kind of more just technical capabilities as well. So yeah, really good. It's going to become a real community space in Golden as well, kind of what their pitch was.
Yeah. So I'll have a story about that coming up here pretty soon. Another show that we just reviewed is Woman in Black at Wheat Ridge Theater Company. Eric saw that one and thought it was pretty interesting. I think he was a little, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a mixed on that one. And then April Took, who's our occasional reviewer down at Colorado Springs, saw Misery at the Fine Arts Center at Colorado College. And of course, that's based on the Stephen King novel or story that was turned into a film with Kathleen Bates and James Caan, where and she really liked it. She thought it was, and it really is the kind of film that lends itself well to a stage adaptation because it's like just two people in a room.
Yeah.
And pretty horrifying story.
It's one of my favorite Stephen King book novels too. So I could I wish I could have got down there to see it. From her review, it sounded like the actors did a really good job. Very well cast.
Yeah. And then also I just got this review in. I haven't had a chance to even look at it or put it up yet, but Eric just turned in a review of the Tina Turner musical, which I know you just saw too. What'd you think of it?
I was not a huge fan of the Tina Turner musical. I'm working on a review of it right now for Boulder Weekly. It was not my favorite. I thought it was kind of a bit clunky in terms of the integration of the music, and I thought it also was like weirdly like comically violent throughout it, which I can elaborate on a little more if you want. But like, I understand from like reading about her life that it was a really abusive life, but a lot of the stage time is spent on this, like, and the stage choreography I thought was really sloppy. It got some laughs from our audience, which I do not think was the intended affect. No. So it was not one of my favorits.
Okay.
I'll be totally honest. And I thought the set looked really cheap too.
Okay. Other than that.
But other than that,
all right. Well, I'll be interested to see what Eric had to say about it. So that'll be up on the site. Also coming up. So I'm just in the middle of writing my review of Blasted, which just opened at Benchmark in Lakewood. And oh my God, this is not a play for everyone. I tell you what. And, John Moore had a story in Denver Gazette about it. And he was talking to Neil Trulio, the director, about, just how edgy it's beyond edgy. It's kind of sick in places. Honestly, it's so in your face and disturbing that I would think most people would be not like super stoked about seeing it. I thought a lot about it, as I left, and actually I was just like, while I was lying in bed this morning, I was trying to think about like, what I want to write about this. And a lot of it that you have to realize about this show is that it's really not meant to be taken literally. And so it's almost like the playwright, Sarah Kane, it just kind of poured kind of like all the foibles, or not foibles, but, awful things that humanity is capable of into these three characters who are kind of in this hotel room. And it's got, a lot of violence. It's got rape. It's got cannibalism, nudity, and not the alluring kind of nudity. And it's just, boy, it was funny because I was driving home for it. I was talking to my wife. She's out of town, and she was just so excited that so the Hallmark Channel just started showing the Christmas shows. And I said to her, I said, well, I just saw what has to be the complete diametric opposite of a Hallmark Christmas movie with the Blasted at Benchmark. It's not something I would ever have taken Jen to see. And honestly, it's one of those plays that's just, you ask yourself, like, why is this play, why is it being produced? Why was it written? It definitely depicts the horrors of war to some extent, but it's got a lot of other things going on that don't seem to have a lot to do with war. If you've got an appetite for really in your face, challenging theater that you could possibly hate or be fascinated by and really enjoy, depending on your predilections. That's Blasted at Benchmark, which is running for a few weeks there. And then tonight I'm going to, I know.
That sounds insane.
It is. It's a crazy ass play. Really, and great performances, I will say. So Josh Levy plays the guy, and Hillary Wheelock is the girl. Then there's a soldier who is kind of a smaller role, but still horrific. Definitely go at your own risk. But if you've got an appetite for super wild theater, that's blasted at Benchmark. Tonight I'm going up to Evergreen. Evergreen Players are doing it's called a steampunk musical. It's about called Nevermore, and I think it's got something to do with Edgar Allan Poe, and so kind of a spooky season show. So I'm kind of excited to go see that. I don't often have a chance to get up to Evergreen. So and then speaking of Miners Alley, they have their kids shows are great. They're doing Sleepy Hollow, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and our reviewer Julie Walker, who's kind of new to the team, is going to have a review for that. And she's also going to see Wolf at the Door, which is at Su Teatro. She'll be at that tonight. And have you done anything on this one, Toni?
I did. Yeah, I chatted with the team about it for a preview at Westward. This is a part of the playwrights trio of Latino fairy tales, dark Latino fairy tales, very much in like the style of Brothers Grimm. And this one is definitely lives up to the title. It is about a pregnant woman stuck in an abusive relationship who is visited by a magic wolf lady who helps her set herself free and find herself. So it is it's a 4-person cast, and it's really well acted, really well paced. And I don't want to say any more than that, because I guarantee you won't be able to predict what happens.
Okay. Well, you had me at magic wolf lady. That sounds pretty interesting. That's it. Natalie Fuentes plays that character, and she is really good. She is just absolutely feral and unhinged on that stage in the best ways. Okay, great. Cherry Creek Theater will have a review of Sondheim on Sondheim, which is for Sondheim fans, clearly, which maybe doesn't include us so much, but Eric is into it, so we'll hear what he has to say. And then BETC, the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, has Coal Country starting pretty soon, which is a show about a kind of a mine disaster, and I think West Virginia. A ways back, so probably heavy drama there. And then Dreamgirls at Lone Tree Arts Center is going on, and that is through October 29th. So Eric will have a review of that. So it's so good. I saw Tina Turner and I saw Dreamgirls. One day I saw Tina Turner first and Dreamgirls second, and night and day. If you can only see one, I cannot recommend more. If you can only see one musical this weekend, I cannot more strongly recommend Dreamgirls, directed by Kenny Moten over in the Lone Tree Arts Center. That's my pick of the week for sure. It's so well done. That's fantastic. So locals beat out the Broadway touring show there. So check that out. We'll have a review. Also on stage now or opening soon. And this is one that you just saw, Man of La Mancha. It's some sort of alternate version that the Platte Valley Players in Brighton are doing. And that's through November 4th. Can you give us a quick take on that? Sure. Yeah. So it's this play is traditionally set in 17th century during the Spanish Inquisition. However, Kelly Van Osbury has set the play at a homeless encampment in 2023 Denver. And so Cervantes, this traveling actor, wild premise. And I would actually say the premise is executed very, very well. I thought that they did it really works, the story, because it's just this traveling actor getting thrust into this situation. He gets his manuscript stolen by these other homeless folk, and then in order to get it back, he has to act out this story using the trash and everything. And I thought the setup was really good. I realized I may not be as huge of a fan of Man of La Mancha, like the music and the actual story itself, because once the Don Quixote, like the actual tradition, what the majority of the show is about, kind of started, I was so on it. The actors did a really nice job, but the story was a little bit just like, Yeah,
we were talking about this before the pod.
Yeah, the last time I saw Man of La Mancha, it was a while ago, and I was like, I will never see this show again. But although I did see Quixote Nuevo at the Denver Center, which I didn't much like either. I thought it was extremely well done. It was a really beautiful production, but I'm just so, it's one of those, it's like Peter Pan. I'm so tired of that story. It's like, come on. So yeah, no Peter and the Starkiller shows for me, I'm sorry to say, or any other Peter Pan stuff. I'm just sick to death of it. Also, a little off the beaten path, or not the beaten path, but off the theater path, Cosmic Howl. Meow Wolf has this going on every day through Halloween. So there's all kinds of scavenger hunts and I don't know, different things going on in spooky season for the whole family. So that might be something to check out if you're looking for a little immersive experiences. The Pace Center is doing Murder for Two, which is a new musical comedy. It's done by Give 5 Productions, so they always do a great job, and that's through November 9th. So I'll have to see if we can get somebody to go out and check that out. This is a one-off here. It's a vintage theater production of A Year with Frog and Toad, which I think they've been doing at their theater, but this is a one-night dinner theater type thing at the Lone Tree Rec Center, which is it's kind of an interesting, just maybe an experiment by Vintage. I don't know, see how this goes to bring something down, because there's not a ton of theater down my way in the Highlands Ranch Lone Tree area. We did just mention Parker and Lone Tree. There are some things going on right now, but anyway, so that's on October 28th if you want to take the kids and go see A Year with Frog and Toad. Way down south in Trinidad, Main Street Live is doing a show called Vino Veritas. It has something to do with two couples drink a strange blue Peruvian wine together, and a weird stuff ensues, apparently. So that sounds pretty interesting. A little also down south a bit in Cripple Creek at the Butte Theatre, another version of Sleepy Hollow. This one's a one-man show, and it is running from today, October 21st through 11/4. And then, of course, we were mentioning Clyde, the Denver Center Theater Company, is kicking off their new season with the show Clyde's opening October 27th and running all the way past Thanksgiving to November 26th. So I will be at that one. So we'll have a review of that. Out west in Aspen, the Aspen Community Theater is doing Once Upon a Mattress at the Wheeler Opera House from October 27th through November 5th. And they've been a little quiet lately. I haven't seen Aspen Community Theater doing a lot lately. So good to see them back. And the Wheeler is a wonderful place to see a show. Cool old venue there. At Coal Creek Theater in Louisville is The Legacy of Baker Street, which has something, this is just Sherlock Holmes' daughters. It's set in the 1930s, doing some kind of mystery stuff, and that's running October 27th through November 11th. And then kind of a little bit of an oddity here, Upstart Crow in Boulder at the Dairy Center is doing It's a Wonderful Life live radio play, which we always think of as kind of more of a Christmas show. And I think there was a reason they were doing it early. I
believe it was rights. They were like, it's just so much cheaper to get the rights in October. It'd be interesting than it is.
If they get people to show up for that, because people, I don't know, feel like, well, I shouldn't say people need to be in the Christmas season to really be in the Christmas mood. I was just talking about my wife and her fondness for Hallmark Christmas movies,
exactly,
which are wildly popular all over the world, I think, and they just crank these things out. It's pretty fascinating. It might be actually something worth digging into sometime. Like maybe you and I can both watch one of these Hallmark movies, the same one, and then like kind of compare notes on it or something.
I'd totally be down to do that. I wonder if the Hallmark movie like production process was affected / if it was at all by like the strikes and everything. Like, are there going to be new Hallmark movies dropping this holiday season, or are they just going to be replaying the old ones?
No, I wouldn't be. I think their production cycle is so vigorous that they probably had a bunch of them in the can. And I think I think these look like movies they can bang out in 6 weeks, I bet, once they've got the script ready. So, they go up to Canada and, they basically all have the same theme. It's like a woman from the city returns to her small hometown in the country, and she's disillusioned about her job and her love prospects, and she meets like some guy who's like, runs the local hardware store, who's like, a god in a flannel shirt. And and there's all kinds of fake snow everywhere and stuff, and it's pretty funny. Sometimes I'll sit and watch a little bit of one with my wife, and she's like it's dumb, but I'm like, no, if you enjoy it, if that's your there's enough awful things going on in the world that a Hallmark Christmas movie or any kind of Hallmark movie might be just the antidote. So
honestly, it seems your wife may actually I feel like your wife might honestly be more like justified in watching the Hallmark movies than something like Blasted. I feel it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I know there's a scene in Blasted that's like I don't even want to mention it, but it's so awful that it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm seeing this on stage. That's how awful it was. So yeah. So what else, Toni? Anything that we haven't touched on that you've got your one more Steve Jobs thing to mention?
Absolutely. I've got one more thing I want to shout out. And in reality, that one more is three more quick things. First is up in Longmont, Sweeney Todd is being done by this production company called the Unitive Theater. It's being directed. It's in an immersive style. It's in their small stage up there. This is a really new company, started in 2022. And so this is their Halloween fair. And it's not a replica production of Sweeney Todd at all. It's inspired by this like opera, and it's all about it. The central vision is, so everyone in Sweeney Todd dies. What if the dead rise up and retell their story in this immersive setting? And so that's kind of the Sweeney Todd you're getting in there through October 31st. This evening, we've talked about it on the pod before, but I just want to shout it out. I'm off to Audacious Immersive to see The Haunting of Your House.
Yes.
So it's that fun show where you get to learn where you die, and then you learn how to be a ghost and haunt your own house.
It's a tutorial of sorts.
It's a tutorial. So I'm looking forward to my walkthrough this evening, courtesy of the Undead. And then I also just wanted to shout out, I've got a piece coming out next week in Westward about Mamma Mia over at the DCPA. So the touring production over there, it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's coming out. That's opening not next week, but the week following. But if you're an ABBA fan, you've probably already got that on your calendar.
Yes. And speaking of my wife, this is one of her favorite things to see. So we'll be there. And I'm also going to, I'm going to have a couple of, one or two of the actors. I'm going to interview them for the podcast. Heidi told me that you were doing a story as well. And so I think it'd be really interesting. I'd love to talk to, what is it like to be in a traveling show like this? What is that life like? It's something that a lot of theater folks do if they're lucky, they get in a touring Broadway show where they're almost guaranteed of selling out every seat. And this is such a weird show. ABBA's such a weird band. I mean, they have such an interesting place in the, and also like the international zeitgeist of pop music. And this show is just, it is a ton of fun. It's light as a feather, but it is a lot of fun to watch. So, and it's 25th anniversary, which is hard to believe. I remember when it came out.
I guess I'll throw one more. The Flea Market. This is a kind of a pop-up, a newer one. It's a variety show meets stand-up act, meets theater, meets performance art. And it's hosted, a lot of crossovers. Yeah. It's hosted at this kind of Forest Room 5, which is kind of this bar space. And they just invite people to kind of try out their new comic acts. They're going to be doing a show this week on Thursday, October 26th. Doors open at 7, shows at 7:30. They've got a music act by Baby Baby, and a portion of the proceeds is going to benefit the charity Earthlinks. So if that sounds like fun, check it out.
All right. Well, thanks, Toni, for all of that. Great input. And please stick around for my interview with Ellen K. Graham with Feral Assembly and her new show coming up, Loki's Monstrous Children. So have a good one, Toni.
You too, Alex. Bye-bye.
All right. Here's my interview with Ellen K. Graham. right, Ellen K. Graham, here we are. Thanks for being on the OnStage Colorado podcast today. It's great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. So you reached out to me, I don't know, a month or so ago to let me know about Loki's Monstrous Children, which is like the greatest title for a play I think I've ever heard. It really grabs you.
Well, I love that you say that because that title is directly from the Prose Edda, which is like the big compendium of Norse myths. And it was actually, I first saw that at the Viking exhibit at the Museum of Nature and Science, which is maybe 5-ish years ago. And they had that title on one of the placards, and then they kind of described the children of Loki. I'm like, it was exactly those 3 words that interested me in the entire project. It all came from the title. So I love that thank you for your
That's great. I'm really into titles and headlines. I think they're really important. And well, let's just back up just a second. Let me just introduce you more about. So Feral Assembly is a sort of a theater organization that you created in I think 2014. And I love I'm just going to read it here. It says, Feral Assembly has no board, no season, no members, no special tax status, dedicated space, or signature cocktail. It's just you, and you created it as a place to showcase your own work, right?
That is correct. Yes. And I think the way that it evolved, it hasn't even evolved this way. I should be very clear that even though I created it, I've really been working alongside the same core group of people for 9 years, most notably Hart DeRose, who has directed everything that Feral Assembly has done. And then also many of the actors I work with are close personal friends. I'm the godmother to one of their children. We are really all, it's almost like feels like a repertory company. However, we only perform plays that are written by me. So it has ultimately come back to that.
Right. So we'll get to Loki's Monstrous Children here in just a little second. I want to ask you about your path to becoming a playwright. Did you study it in college? How'd you get started doing that?
I was just a lifelong theater fan. I'm a Denver native, and my mom and I went to the Denver Center. We had season tickets for years and years and years, from the time that I was in middle school all the way through going off to college. So I loved the theater. I was mostly a poet. I liked to write poetry in high school. And then the Denver Center Theater Company in 1990 or so, they had put an announcement out for a young playwrights unit. And I was a huge theater fan. I'd never written a play. And so I submitted, my application was an op-ed that I'd written for my high school newspaper. I was the editor of the Thomas Jefferson High School newspaper. And they accepted me on the basis of that. And then I started writing plays. And then, it was we met with the proper playwrights unit at the Denver Center, and they're the young playwrights. We got to be mentored by all these amazing playwrights, including Terry Dodd, Frank X. Hogan, Anthony Powell, and then, of course, the repertory company of actors I've been watching my entire life, read our words at the showcase. So that was really the hook for me. That's when I started writing plays, was that young playwrights opportunity at the Denver Center Theater Company. And then thereafter, I pretty much wrote exclusively plays and eventually screenplays. And no formal training. I've just learned over decades of practice. I probably would have gotten to where I am now much, much faster had I actually studied it. I kind of bumbled my way along for a long time.
Yeah. Well, everybody's got a different path. And, I love that you just said, to heck with trying to, go through the whole, submission and all that stuff and just create your own thing. And of course, for a while there, Theater 29 was a great little venue for you and some other playwrights. And that kind of, I don't think it made it through the pandemic.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. Which, we had lots of casualties from the pandemic, and it was just, it's hard to run a theater space. So, fortunately I have, Buntport Theater is an amazing partner with production companies in Denver. And I've had the privilege of working with them before, as a contributing writer, and they've been really amazing and really accommodating. So we're excited to be in that space next.
Yeah, Buntport's got a great space. It's so flexible. It's just just 4 walls and some seats, and you can pretty much set it up wherever you want.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about this play. So you talked about where the genesis of the name came from, and where did you say that was? That you were in Scandinavia somewhere?
I think, let's see, so it's 2023. I think the exhibit was like 2018, and I wrote a draft of that play, I guess maybe in about a year. I remember it was right before the pandemic. I had a reading as part of the Fever Dream Festival at Benchmark Theater. Fever Dream was their sci-fi fantasy kind of themed playwrights festival. And so they were very gracious and offered me a developmental opportunity. And so I think that was October 2019, which seems like a lifetime ago. So I had a complete draft at that time. And then obviously the pandemic hit and nothing happened for a long time.
Okay. So this one's been cooking or on the back burner for a little while, and you're finally bringing it out. So what and sci-fi fantasy, this is kind of like your wheelhouse, right? Most of the plays do. Or
I have been in this. Yeah, I think it's a lot about my personal preference of what I like to watch and read. And it has felt like a very nimble, responsive genre that can allow you to comment on the times we're living in without literally commenting, without doing like a rip from the headlines thing that's going to be obsolete next week. I think sci-fi fantasy are great ways of exploring those themes. And that's nothing new. That's like the Star Trek thing, right? That you just talk about all kinds of stuff via these imaginary worlds, all kinds of real stuff via these imaginary worlds. But I have to say, I still do like the play that I just finished writing is more of a, it still has kind of magical elements to it, but it's not as genre-y as my recent plays have been. So I might circle back to that. It looks like I am circling back to that as well. But I definitely, the past 5 or 7 years have been dominated by dystopia, fantasy. Yeah, that stuff.
Right. Well, so Loki is a god. He was like god of mischief or something like that. Or and so you had the title. Where did the plot come from? Is it based on a tale?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yes. I think the thing that's so moving about this little bit of the prose edda where I got this title is it really just describes his children and that they were their mother. So Loki and was their father, and a giantess named Angrboda, I'm probably mispronouncing that, was their mother. And they were, according to the mythology, there was a prophecy that Fenrir, the giant wolf, would eventually end up killing Odin. And so Odin took the kids, who are a wolf, a snake, and this kind of half-blue humanoid. He essentially took them from their mother and like tied Fenrir up with a magical rope, banished Jormungandr, the snake, to under the sea, where he goes around the girth of the earth. You kind of see that in a lot of Viking art. You see that kind of circular snake holding the world together. He's also called the Midgard serpent. Okay, anyway, so he was banished. Yeah, you see, yeah. So that's Jormungandr, and so he was banished to the bottom of the sea, and then the humanoid was made queen of the underworld. So he sort of took these kids from their mom and banished them out, and of course the prophecy comes true anyway, because the prophecy has always come true, right? So there was just something and it's like one little paragraph in this giant prose edda. There's a few other things about them through the course of the literature, but mostly it's that one, Loki's monstrous children, these poor innocent children kidnapped and banished. And it made me feel like, wow, that's a story there. That's a story there. And like, to me, that I was just really anxious to dig into their psychology and see what sort of backstory I could create for them, and to hopefully create some sympathy, empathy for these kind of banished, misunderstood children who only warrant one paragraph in this giant, literature.
I just want to ask you, you were calling it the prose edda. I'm not familiar with that. So it basically it's the big book of Norse mythology.
Yes, that's. I think the writer's name is Snorri Sturluson. I think that's right. It's a great name, and I think it's. I am like, I know this much about it, right? Like this much, but it's kind of like the treasury of all the written down treasury of all the essential
Grimm's
myths.
fairy tales of.
Yes.
And how do you spell that? Is it PROS?
Yeah, PROSE. So prose, like opposite of poetry, and then Edda is EDDA.
Okay.
And actually I bought the book in the gift shop at the Vikings exhibit at the Museum of Nature and Science because I was so taken by the Loki's Monstrous Children title. I'm like, here we go. This is going to be the next thing. So I just bought, there's like a penguin edition of this little paperback. Right. So.
You could probably spend the rest of your career creating plays out of the stories of the president if you really wanted to.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. No doubt.
That could be the thing you're known for, but I'm sure you'll move on to some other things. So and I was noticing there's a fairly sizable cast. So I'm just going to read the cast list. So it's got, of course, directed by Hart DeRose, and it's got Bevan Antea, Callista Masters, Josh Berkowitz, Artie Thompson, Dakota C. Hill, Gina Wenzel, Jonathan Underwood, Marian Amari, Matthew Schultz, and Terry Burnsit. And hopefully I pronounced those close to right. But that's a pretty sizable cast. So what are they all doing? some of the children and.
That's a great question. And I would like to point out that there are 20 characters, I think 19 or 20 characters. So 10 actors, not so bad. Many of the actors are cross-cast. What I wanted to do was to have a fully fleshed out supernatural world, and then also fully fleshed out human world. And so that needs a lot of people, a lot of characters. But there is a lot of kind of mirroring in the doubling of the characters. For example, lazy and slothful, those are from the literature as well. Can you believe those are the real names of these characters in Norse mythology that are the kind of the servants to the queen of the underworld? So they're lazy and slothful when they're in the underworld. And those same two actors play kind of these cubicle rats in the real world. So there is a sort of a logical mirroring with the cross-casting. So we have, we have Hel, Queen of the Underworld, and Fenrir, who's the wolf. And those two characters are not cross-cast. We do something a little bit differently with the snake, which I maybe shouldn't quite reveal, but the snake is not exactly portrayed by an actor. But we have another key character named Marie, played by Callista Masters, and that character is not cross-cast either. So really, we have that kind of core group of actors, and then there's like a almost like a very nimble ensemble,
right?
To fill in all the mortal and immortal characters. Yeah.
And how much work went into the production side of this with is the wolf in a wolf suit or just has some ears or how much did you go into that?
Right. Not very much. I think I'm a huge proponent, and I have this in the script itself. To me, 9.9 times out of 10, actor magic will be better than any fake ears, fake tail. The Josh Berkowitz, who's playing Fenrir, can embody a wolf just wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He doesn't need all that. And I think one thing I love about theater is that you're not dependent on, to me, the acting and the writing come first. The acting and the writing are first. And if you have a budget to do all this other stuff, maybe don't even use it then. Because we can see in film, just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. And that's never been an interest of mine as a writer, to have lots of kind of pyrotechnics on stage. That said, Buntport Theater Company is a company I really admire because all the technology and all the stage tricks they do are ingenious, and they elevate the piece. You're never like, oh, that was a waste of time and money to make that thing. It always feeds into what the play is about. And I think I'm learning from them. When I collaborated with them, I learned from them how to do that more elegantly. But the place where I am comfortable is to write all sorts of crazy stuff and then know that actors can embody it with their bodies and their voices, because that's what they're brilliant at. So we have a few things to hint at the supernatural nature of our immortals in this play, but it's definitely that was not the emphasis of this production.
And is it a 2-act or 1-act?
It's it seems like all of us playwrights now are kind of writing these plays that are of whatever length and whatever. So I think that's like, it's just so different. Like, I think I used to have an act break. I think we're doing it without an intermission. And it's about, I think it's like 16 or 17 scenes. And you probably could put an act break in there, but it's about, it'll be 90 minutes, 90 to 100 minutes probably in runtime with no intermission.
And so in the information you set out, you're saying, you said that you've taken these Loki's kids and they're planning a family reunion about and it's kind of, it goes into modern times as well. You said the mirrors.
Yes. Yeah, it is entirely in the present. Yes. Or the very near future. Yes. And I think the family reunion, I mean, for your listeners who are real Norse mythology nerds, but Ragnarok, which is the end of the world in Norse mythology, that really is when the children of Loki are liberated. So it's sort of pointing toward, and there is quite a bit about Ragnarok in the literature, right? About what happens at the end of the world. So that's kind of what we're aiming toward, is the liberation of the children, which could culminate in the end of the world. I think that one thing that's really unique about this piece for me is I feel like it ties together a lot of my personal interests and also interests that have to do with fandom and just nerddom generally. So, of course, Loki is now become sort of a Marvel property, even though it belongs to all of us because it's in the public domain. So there's that kind of aspect of it, the kind of superhero-y aspect of it. But then also I drew really heavily upon tropes in fan fiction. I'm a big fan of fan fiction. So kind of taking, we take familiar characters and remix them and tell the story that you wish it had, the way that you wish it had been told. So I definitely use some elements from fan fiction and developing the story. And then also role-playing games. Role-playing games play a really important role in this play, and they're kind of pivotal to the plot, like Dungeons and Dragons type role-playing games. Though I want to be super clear, I only started playing D&D maybe 5 years ago, and I'm probably really bad at it. My husband's much more into it. He's like, yeah, I don't think this die roll would work here. I mean, he had to come, he's like fact checking it for me. But so I think that's one thing that I appreciate about it. And I'm hoping that people who don't normally engage much with theater will kind of dig some of the more pop culture-y, fandom derived motifs throughout this piece.
All right. Well, it sounds really interesting. And I'm really excited to go see it. I think I'll be there on November 4th. So this is going to be, Loki's Monstrous Children by Ellen K. Graham, directed by Hart DeRose, is going to be at the Buntport Theater. And there's going to be a show every day from November 2nd through November 11th, except for that Monday, the 6th, of course. And then there's shows at 8 p.m. and then there's a Sunday matinee at 3. So you have plenty of opportunity to get out and see Loki's Monstrous Children at Buntport. So Elton, thanks so much for coming on the podcast to tell us all about it, and best of luck breaking legs and all that with this show.
Thank you, Alex, and look forward to seeing you on the 4th at the show.
All right. Okay, that's it for this week's episode of the OnStage Colorado podcast. Thanks so much to Ellen Graham for coming on to talk about her new play, and to Toni Tresca for lending his ever-growing knowledge of Colorado theater to our conversation. We're still working on scheduling for our next guests on the podcast, but we are planning to have an actor or two from the upcoming 25th anniversary show of Mamma Mia, the touring Broadway production of which will be at the Butte Theatre starting October 31st in Denver. And as part of a series we're doing to chat with more behind-the-scenes theater artists, we'll have Amelia Morse with the Morse Actors Studio on. Amelia was the intimacy director for the benchmark production of Blasted, so we're excited to talk with her about that because there was a lot of intimacy direction that was needed for that show. And since we've always wanted to interview a dramaturge on the pod, we're planning to have the director of literary programs at the Denver Center join us as well. And we'll also have Brian Mulgrave, the resident scenic designer at the Arvada Center, on soon. They've got a production of Cinderella coming up, so I'm sure he'll have plenty to say about that. Great stuff coming up, so if you haven't already, please subscribe to the OnStage Colorado podcast, wherever you get your audio stuff. And please give us a review or a couple of stars if you're enjoying the program. and let the other theater lovers in your life know about us. And be sure to check out all the reviews, news, and other podcast episodes and our full statewide theater calendar on the website at onstagecolorado.com. I'm Alex Miller, and we'll see you at the show.